So speaking of old consoles that are coming back, because remember Sega Genesis? TecToy in Brazil is producing a brand new Sega Genesis system. Now, if you're not familiar with TecToy, these are the guys that in Brazil, produce the Master System, and I guess they called it the Mega Drive down there, which was the European and Japanese name for the Sega Genesis. TecToy pretty much is a reason why in South America, especially Brazil, Nintendo never really caught on, and Sega's huge. So TecToy brought the Mega Drive and Master System over to Brazil even before the NES came there, before Nintendo got sort of their foot in there, which is sort of what happened in Europe as well, is that the NES took too long to get to Europe and never really got a good distribution line going over for most parts. So that's why the NES is sort of an not uncommon system, but you're talking about the BBC Micro, Commodore, Amiga systems, ZX or ZX Spectrum being the more popular gaming choices for the 80s and early 90s versus the NES. So TecToy, according to Wikipedia, had an 80% market share of the Brazilian market when it came to video games. That's not quite the 90% that the Nintendo had with the NES in the late 80s, but that's almost. That's pretty good. So the Master System in Brazil was going strong until like the late 90s. In the US, it sucked monkey balls. Monkey balls or donkey balls? It sucked whatever ball you prefer in the US because it never really caught on, and they sort of swiped it to the side and went to the Genesis. But in Brazil, it was hugely popular. I mean, TecToy even put out like a pink Master System, I guess, for the female market, for girls to play. Pink NES would have been cool. Anyway, so they had stuff like Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Streets of Rage in Brazil. I need to bring up a list of Master System games in Brazil. So it would make sense if you have something like the NES Classic Edition coming out in the US to have not a full equivalent, because I'll get into why in a second it's not, but having the hugely popular system in Brazil, one of the biggest countries in South America, have their version come out. So it's going to be their own Mega Drive or Sega Genesis, but we'll just call it Sega Genesis for ease here. It's a Genesis that looks like the same exact shell, very similar. It's going to have 22 built-in games. They call them pre-programmed. There's going to have internal flash memory. You're going to have 22 games. I'll get into a few in a second. But what's important here, and this is why it's not the NES Classic Edition for two reasons. It's going to be not HDMI compatible. It's going to have an SD card reader that's going to be able to load the 22 pre-programmed games. Oh, and any more you want to add. Oh, okay. Interesting. See, one report I didn't see this having an SD card reader, which means they're not concerned about piracy at all. Very interesting. Wow. But this is going to have a cartridge slot for your Master System. Excuse me, not Master System. For your Genesis / Mega Drive games. Well, I guess if you have a power-based converter, it's also for your Master System games as well. So you can say, Pat, what's the big deal? At Games has had their crappy Genesis clone consoles out for the past 5-6 years. That is true. Hell, you can buy them anywhere. Retro game shops. You can go to Walmart. Freaking Bed Bath & Beyond carries these stupid things with built-in games and even a cartridge slot. However, those are all Genesis or Mega Drive on a chips. Those are basically shoddily done emulators on a chip, which is why you don't get close to 100% game compatibility. The sound is off. Ian could go into more detail if he was here right now about them. But that's not what you want if you actually want to get an authentic Sega Genesis experience. But according to these reports, is that this TecToy Mega Drive is going to have Sega Genesis guts. That's big. That is really big. It's going to be using according to its FAQ, frequently asked questions out there, quote unquote, computer components that are close to the original console's guts as possible. That means the price is going to be higher, obviously, than like a cheap AtGames $40 Genesis. But hell, if you want the actual experience again, why not? Go out and buy it. Go out and buy it. It comes with one controller. Again, no HDMI. It's going to have AV composite. It's going to cost around roughly $125 US. You might balk at that price, but again, if you're using real hardware, real, if you're using the actual sound chips, graphics processor, Genesis processor, it's going to cost money. A lot more you have to throw in there than a Genesis on a chip. Now, I have no interest in this. You might not. But if you're in Brazil and this was quote unquote your NES back then in the 90s, oh, you're gonna love this if you can't get your hands on a normal console. Absolutely. According to SegaNerds.com, it's going to have the following games in memory. So now I'm not sure now. Okay, so they are going to be built in, but it will also have an SD card reader. Okay, that makes a lot more sense than having a card you got to insert to play the games. Right? I think so. So I'm guessing you turn it on, it's going to have a menu. You're going to get on this, you're going to get Alex Kidd. I'm guessing, they had an Enchanted Castle on the Genesis. Could be that one. Alien Storm, Altered Beast, Arrow Flash, not familiar, Bonanza Brothers, Columns, Decap Attack, E-SWAT, Fatal Labyrinth, Flicky. So if you're following, these are a lot of first-party games. Gain Ground, not familiar. Golden Axe 1 and 3. Jewel Master, Kid Chameleon, Last Battle, Outrunners, which is an excellent game in the arcade. I never played the Genesis one. That was an Outrun sequel that you can select different cars. Sega Soccer, Shadow Dancer, Shinobi 3. Wait a minute, which one was Shadow Dancer? Shadow Dancer was Shinobi 2, right? Sonic 3 and Turbo Outrun. You get the AC adapter, the 1-3 button, joypad, and you get the composite cable. Compatible. Obviously it's a PAL region, South America. PAL M composite. There's a little headphone volume control like the original, and it goes into the details there. So this is TecToy saying, screw it, we're gonna put out a cool console that's as close to the original as we can get in this day and age, and it's gonna cost $125. So a lot of you out there are probably gonna wish Nintendo's gonna do it. Ain't never gonna happen for Nintendo for lots of reasons why. Mainly because they make so much sales on the virtual console games and on the 3DS. There's no reason for them to do that, and especially including SD slot. But all right, I'm interested. I'd be interested in trying one out, but we'll have to see if there's some method to import them from Brazil. It may not be easy to do that. All right, who's gonna be next? Hey, NEC, where are you putting out your TurboGrafx remake system? You can actually sell a decent amount. There's only like 2,000 people interested in TurboGrafx 16 though, but you can make some money. Why not?